Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson.
And I'm Haley Dudley.
And welcome to the final episode of the Hatchetfield Retrospectives. And today, we're going to be discussing the technically fourth play in Team Starkit's Hatchetfield series, Workin Boys. Now, I call it a play because it's part of the Hatchetfield story, multiverse, whatever, but this is not a play. In reality, Workin Boys was actually a short film that was only supposed to be seen by the Kickstarter backers for Nerdy Prudes Must Die. That was the only way you could see it if you backed the original show, and for a while that's how it was remade. That's just the only way you could see it. Mm-hmm. But about a year ago, they wound up releasing it to YouTube publicly, and so now it's available for the greater world to see, and so we're going to be talking about it today. Now, experience?
I mean, aside from having seen the guy who does not like musicals, this is the second movie that I've seen from them, or short film or anything like that. I thought it was entertaining, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Wide variety of characters.
Yep. And as for me, I only just watched this about a week ago because, well, I guess I was a bit behind on my Hatchetfield stuff, and, well, I was waiting until I watched Nerdy Prudes Must Die before watching this in full. And what are my thoughts on it? Well, let's get to our plot summary and find out. And as you could probably tell if you're familiar with the Hatchetfield mythos or with the title of the play, the main character of the play is actually Professor Henry Higgins, who you may remember from the guy who didn't like musicals. And I do want to bring up this elephant in the room. It's not the same actor. At some point during the pandemic, after the first season of Nightmare Time, the actor who played Higgins left Team Starkid, and so while Professor Higgins was still a part of any productions that involved Hatchetfield, the role was kind of passed around. I say passed around because ultimately it was just like two different actors who played him. And for this one, the actor is Jeff Blim, who not only does all the songs for the Hatchetfield shows, but you may remember as the role of Paul's boss and Sam from The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. But I think he did a good job with the role. He definitely carried Higgins' unhinged nature and definitely could be over the top and insane when he wanted to be. But whatever. Anyway, so what's going on in this is that Professor Higgins wants to get Workin Boys funded, and how he's trying to do that is that he submitted it as part of a writer's workshop alongside two other plays. And so the film actually opens with him trying to pitch the show to one of the representatives from the theater. And before he really gets that far into his pitch, he's stopped and he's told he doesn't really have to worry. It's been picked. They're going to fund it. The play's going to be on production. And at first, Higgins is all overjoyed, happy that his production is finally going to see the light of day. Until he's told that they're going to do some minor rewrites. Small ones. And as such, the film, after it shows the title, cuts to the first night of rehearsal as we see Workin Boys getting ready for production. Or rather, Workin Girls, which, believe it or not, is actually the punchline for a joke from Nightmare Time. But yeah, basically the show has been rewritten so that instead of it being a show about a bunch of guys who go and play football and made it big in the business world, it's about a bunch of girls who made it big in the business world and play football, but for girls. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly that. It's literally just that. Just to try and make the play be more consistent, all the male roles have been turned into female roles, and Higgins has made it so that every line that says they play football is they play football, but for girls. Every time. And even during production, when one of the actresses says, hey, maybe you can just shorten it to football, Higgins just goes off on her because that's how he wants it written, so that's how he wants it to be performed. So they're just gonna do it.
Mm-hmm. And to point out though, that changes. But then, like when the moment in the script where it was originally supposed to be a bunch of men talking about, oh my goodness, we're gonna go on dates and stuff like that, and doing locker room talk sort of stuff. That didn't get changed at all.
Oh,
it's
no.
just now there's women saying it.
Yeah. Before they were talking about before the boys were talking about girls in the sorority and their shapely figures. Now it's a bunch of girls talking about boys from a sorority with shapely figures.
Literally word for word the same, except for instead of boy, girl.
Exactly. And even during rehearsals, one of the production assistants asked Higgins if maybe this scene even reads better, actually still reads well now they're girls, and that maybe they should change it. And he just says, not one word. But yeah, basically, Higgins does not like the fact that his play has been turned into this, and so while he goes along with it because he wants Workin Boys to be made, he is not having a good time at all. And so while he is thankful for certain parts of the production, like the lead actress for the play is Zoe, who you may remember from The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. She was one of Emma's co-workers. And likewise, there's even other characters from previous productions, like one of the actresses is Ruth Fleming from Nerdy Prudes Must Die. She plays the role of Secretary Number 4, and even asked Higgins for notes on the role, wanting to know more about her character, including her sexual fantasies. Higgins' response to her is that she is just a brain fart from my mind. She has one line, and she's called Secretary Number 4 because she's the fourth secretary that talks. And so Ruth's getting all into it with his productions, though he ends it with, never speak to me again. And if you ad lib, they'll never find you. But yeah, basically, while Higgins is trying to make the best of a bad situation, he's just in absolute hell the entire time. He is not enjoying everything. He thinks all the actors are subpar, and he just thinks it's a shameless gender swap in every sense of the word.
The funny part to me being is that the only thing that has been swapped is the literal gender of the characters or the actors playing the characters. Everything else is the same. Everything else.
Ironically, it's because of his artistic integrity that it is a shameless gender swap.
Oh yeah, 110%.
Yeah. So, but either way, productions continue moving along. Everybody keeps rehearsing. They try and narrow down the costumes for all the characters, with Zoe playing the role of Henrietta Higgins, and she even has her costume be okayed by Henry as the production goes along. But eventually, opening night comes, and Henry does pull in all the actors or actresses for the usual opening night pep talk. Although in his case, it's an anti-pep talk because he talks about how this show is loosely based on his life. And about how he and his friends used to also have their own field that they used to play football on. But apparently, that all came to an end because one day they decided to go and play football in the middle of a storm, and they were just running into each other, the water glistening off their tight bodies, and eventually they all wound up in a giant pile, all scrambling for the football, until a lightning strike came down and fried all of them. And the only one who made it out alive was Higgins, who basically had to crawl his way out of the pile. And he even says that was the worst night of his life. Until now. He basically just tells the actresses that they butchered his vision, he has to sit there and watch them ruin his show, and how he's never gonna forgive them. And so, Workin' Girls begins happening. And again, another thing I like is that in the audience, while there are a variety of different people watching the show, there are representatives from each of the 3 previous Hatchetfield shows. Like, in one row, we see Bill and Ted. Bill obviously wanted to see the show, but unfortunately his daughter couldn't come, and Paul doesn't like musicals. He didn't want to come. So he was stuck for calling Ted, and Ted only came along because he thought it was a show about hookers.
Working girls.
Yes. And then likewise, in the second row, there's Linda Monroe and her husband Gerald, and again, I kind of like seeing them here because again, our consequence of not talking about Nightmare Time is that I didn't get to talk about Gerald, but I like that while Gerald is clearly henpecked by his wife, he clearly loves how much of a bitch she is, and he just kind of revels in it.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like the characters that you love to hate to me.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and then likewise, in the back row are characters from Nerdy Prudes Must Die, as we see Richard Lipschitz and Grace Chastity there, and of course, Grace like Ted thinks it's a show about hookers, but because it's Grace Chastity, she's of course being completely critical about it, and likewise next to them is one of the police officers from Nerdy Prudes Must Die, and the drama teacher from the high school. But again, after that, the show basically starts, and for the most part, things are going well. Everyone's saying their lines, the songs are performed well, everything's just going great, and the audience does seem to like it, and they even laugh at the line about how the girls are talking about all the boys and their shapely figures, which gets on Henry's nerves because they weren't supposed to laugh at that scene, and he even thinks that they're just all idiots. And so, as the first act is getting closer to its end, Ruth has her line, and she flubs it up by getting stage fright and blanking on her line, and when Zoe tries to tell her what her line is, which in this case is, "Excuse me, who are you?" Ruth then mistakes that as her actually asking who she is. And basically, Henry's just watching this train wreck and thinking that it's just a disaster. And so as he steps backstage, just mulling over how bad this thing is, well, it turns out that we see another reason why Henry's a little unhinged. Because it turns out that, apparently, every once in a while, Henry has hallucinations. Specifically, hallucinations of all of his friends who died that night on the football field. As they all come out of the woodwork, all with glossed over eyes, fried skin, and distorted
Straight
voices.
zombie mode.
Yeah, and they basically are criticizing Henry, and Henry's like, he shouldn't be here, they should have given him warning. It's the first opening night, they haven't worked out all the kinks. But yeah, basically they have the same criticism that Henry does, that this show is a travesty, it insults their memory, it's a shameless gender swap, and Henry tries to say, I tried to stop them, but yeah, they're not even saying, they pretty much tell him that the thing is screwed, and that Chet won't like this. For context, that's one of the boys, and he's not here right now because he was held up at work, but he'll be around about 5 o'clock. But then they tell Henry that if he truly wants to make the show right, then he know what must be done. As such, the first act comes to a close as all the actresses are gathering on set, and Henry comes back onto the scene, and Ruth tries apologizing for flubbing her line, saying she'll get it better next time. But Henry just says there won't be a next time. Not for her or any of them, which confuses the actresses until Henry pulls out a hatchet and says he's decided to make a few last-minute cuts. As such, we then cut back to the audience as everyone's just kind of getting situated, and the lights go down, everyone takes their seats, and the curtains go back. And what they're greeted to is Henry dragging off the remains of the actresses that he's just chopped to bloody bits. And his face is just covered in blood as he goes up to address the audience and just goes, ladies and gentlemen, for obvious reasons, the actress won't be able to perform the rest of the night, and I apologize for the travesty you've witnessed, but I'm just gonna have to do the show myself. Of course, I'll be the only actor, but hey, the show must go on. And at first, everyone's looking at this and thinking, oh, what the heck's going on? But then they soon realize, oh shit, that guy murdered everybody, and everyone freaks out. And when everyone starts screaming, Henry tells them they have to sit back down and watch the rest of the show, except for Ted. But Ted. Well, Ted runs away.
He'd been looking through the playbook and saying that there were no hookers in there, and then all of a sudden there's blood. I'm not hanging out for this, and stood up.
Yeah, he tries running, and then he gets shot in the back of the head. Apparently, Higgins also had a gun. Mm-hmm. So that results in almost everyone in the audience just ducking down to their seats while Higgins continues trying to perform the show by himself. Only for Richard and Grace to go look at the police officer. It's like, hey, aren't you a police officer? Aren't you going to do something? It's like, what can I do? You have a gun. It's like, oh yeah, my gun. And he hands the gun to them.
Save us.
At which point, as Henry continues performing, someone does end up shooting him, and we see the shooter is Grace Chastity. And yes, just like in the end of Nerdy Prudes Must Die, it's clear she's got a clear taste for it as she begins quoting scripture, and just unloads the thing right into Henry's chest. And really, the film kind of ends there as Henry drops dead. The audience freaks out and runs out of the theater. Mm-hmm. And the last words Henry says are that it was a standing ovation before he finally succumbs to his wounds and dies. So, yeah, that was Workin' Boys. Your thoughts?
It was very entertaining. I think that. Okay, so with the whole the actors being different, unknown of what happened with that. My first thought, because I was a little dumb, didn't catch on to it right away because they look similar enough, and then the styling was very similar. But then it became very apparent when, because not intentional, I know it has just to do with the actor's vibe, but in the guy who hates musicals,
the guy who didn't like musicals,
Higgins he's insane, yes, and he's ridiculous, but he's more whimsical insane, not until he's actively trying to kill someone, not actively malicious insane. Whereas here, this is okay, we've gotten past that, we've gotten past my career stuff, this is my chance to live out my dream, and then the feeling of it being kind of stepped on, really, that I appreciate how it was, it felt more unhinged, and it felt more vengeful in the sense of look, I'm trying to do a really cool artsy thing that I've spent a lot of my mental energy thinking about and preparing, and you keep touching it. Stop touching it. So that I appreciate a lot.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty great that that Grace is the one who killed him in the end. I thought, I would be concerned that she's going to be a serial killer, honestly.
Like I said, this is not the first time.
Yeah, no, and she's either going to be a serial killer or some sort of vigilante or police officer, because she's standing there, and it's not just Bible verse like that. I don't know if you caught what she was quoting, but she was specifically talking about how, if a man should raise his hand to me, then I shall use the divine, like, basically, I shall use the might of God against this man. Grace needs a hug, and...
Oh, she wouldn't want a hug. She doesn't like physical contact like that. In fact, if any guy tried offering her a hug, she would be repulsed and just think that it's so impure of them to offer a hug before they're married.
I stand by. Grace needs a hug, even if that hug is just to conceal the syringe. But I thought it was watching Higgins unravel throughout their play, and the actors in the actual play being 100% oblivious to it. The people who are supposed to be the actors in Working Boys, they're 100% oblivious to the fact that Higgins is breaking down, like standing next to them, actively contemplating murder, and they have no clue the entire time they're doing their practicing and rundown and all that. And I appreciate that. It was very interesting. I appreciate the way they did the whole, like, with people playing multiple roles. You mentioned it earlier when we talked about it.
Yeah, because again, there are characters between all the Hatchetfield productions that do share roles. Like, for obvious reasons, another reason why Paul wasn't in the audience is, well, obviously he doesn't like musicals, but his actor was playing Richard Lipschitz, because that's the same actor. So obviously they can't share the same role. But then likewise, the actress who plays Grace Chastity also played one of the actresses in Workin' Girls. So again, depending on the angle, you can have them both be in the same area without them being in the same shot, and I like that.
No, they handled that very well. Which, when you have a limited amount of people and you got a lot of freaking roles, you gotta get them on screen somehow.
Yeah.
I appreciate the way they did it. I really appreciated how it was. Specifically talking about I don't know her name. I'm sorry.
Grace Chastity.
Yes. Specifically, I was talking about Grace Chastity, and then the other character that was played, the actor character. They both have a very specific vibe. The actor character was very much like, golly, guys, let me help. I just want to be part of the group.
What makes it better, too, is that she was the one who questioned them about him constantly calling it football, but for girls, and she called him out on it, and so he just chewed her out in front of everyone, presented her resume saying, do you want to direct? Do you want to do this? And she's the one that left in tears, and so she's the one that's later is kissing the most ass.
And every time she opens her mouth, like, even before the football moment, every time she was kind of like, Higgins could not stop himself. Yeah. And I
don't make me show you my resume.
I find that funny, if only because then you have no, you can't say that shit. No, you can't tell me anything. And then you have, Grace coming in, and it's this, yes, same actor, whatever.
Yeah.
Grace coming in, and basically the same sort of shit where it's just like, well, actually, did you think that maybe this would be a better way to do it? And, of course, because he's on murder spree at this point, it's far more, no, we're just gonna get the hell out of here. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And rambles.
Yeah.
Yes.
You liked it.
Yes, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. That was a lot of 30 minutes of ridiculousness. I appreciate it.
Yeah. As for me, I also enjoyed it. Now, I will openly admit, in comparison to the other Hatchetfield productions, this one, it definitely does feel smaller, and that's by design, because the other productions were 2+ hour long shows, and they were meant to feel larger, as those were productions, like I said.
It's a movie versus a TV show.
Well, like, this is a short film, while those are full-blown musicals. And so those ones had more time to let the story play out, let the characters have their moments, and so on and so forth. As such, since this is a half-hour-long movie, it doesn't really have a lot of time to delve into our characters beyond Henry Higgins and his slow descent into madness. Although you could argue he was already mad, so I don't really know.
I would say it's more of the mask slipping on the madness and becoming more relevant to the public.
Yeah.
One more thing. I do appreciate how they, when including all of these characters that are established characters in previous shows and all that fun stuff, you don't have to do as much character building or anything. That's a comment. That's
the thing. While they don't have as many character moments, they don't really need them. It's kind of like when you open up, because Black Friday opened up with Paul and Emma from The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. They may be different versions of the characters, but you know these characters. And so you don't really need to build them up in this situation, as you know enough about them to try and get a grasp of who they are. Obviously, you still have to do a little groundwork because the situation is in one play is not the same situation as in another, but they don't have to do as much legwork to try and build them up. And it's a similar case here, as Workin' Boys basically expect you to go into this already familiar with the Hatchetfield multiverse and already more than familiar with the characters. You're already supposed to know who Henry Higgins is. You're supposed to know who Ruth is, who Zoe is, who Bill, Ted, Linda, Gerald, Richard, Grace, even the police officer and the teacher. They're all characters who have appeared in previous productions. And while I can say that you don't need to watch those to appreciate having them here because they don't have any major roles beyond Ted getting shot in the head and Grace ultimately being the one to take Higgins down, at the same time, knowing who these characters are beforehand does kind of add a little extra flavor to everything because you already have seen the productions that these characters were a part of. In fact, seeing them all here together, in my opinion, helps kind of create a sense of unity. I talked about how Paul and Emma's appearance in Black Friday did actually help tie Black Friday to the guy who didn't like musicals, because Black Friday was because their appearance helped tie Black Friday together and helped showcase that there were a few things in common, even if the events of the guy who didn't like musicals did not play a major impact on Black Friday. With that said, but again, Workin' Boys, like I said, already knows that you already very much expect you to know who these characters are, and so seeing them all here, it's just kind of nice seeing them there because they've already been pre-established. It's fun, even if they don't interact with one another, it's just kind of a nice little Easter egg seeing them there. It's fun seeing Bill and Ted in the audience, and Bill complaining he has to take Ted, while Ted is just wondering, where are all the hookers in this show? It's fun to see Linda and Gerald in the audience, and Linda, of course, still being a bitch like she was in the Black Friday, and Gerald having to take it while also still being snuggly with his wife, even though the only snacks she let him have were raisins and wine.
One pack of raisins.
But the thing is, she was one of the only people who did not freak out when Higgins went off the rails. In fact, when she saw that all the actresses are dead, she just went, thank God. And then when Higgins was shot dead, she was just sitting in her seat going,
whoa.
Yeah, it's clear that that's fun to see. And then likewise again, seeing the characters from Nerdy Prudes Must Die here is nice too, because again, this was meant to be a film to help, as a reward for people who backed that production. So it's nice seeing them here too. And again, this is basically the third time in the Hatchetfield productions where we see Grace Chastity basically just become a killer by the end, as she's the one that ends up taking out Higgins, even though the police officer was too chicken shit to do it himself. Actually, I love that too. I just love the joke with that one. They say, you're a police officer, couldn't you do something? Oh yeah, here, you
save us.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, there's a comment.
Thanks.
There's a commentary there, but I don't really know what it is. But yeah, that's all fun. But ultimately, the main focus of the show is just Henry's descent into madness. And quite frankly, it's both disturbing but a little funny.
Yeah, very. Well, I mean, Henry himself presents everything the way he's doing it so dramatized, for lack of a better way to put it. It's so camp. It's so just like, even when he's saying that he, not actually saying that he killed all the actors, but all of them are no longer able to continue. So I will take care of all the roles myself.
Which I think works too, because to kind of once again compare this version of Henry to the version we saw in The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. Both versions are basically fill the role of the nutty professor archetype, and while they don't play the role in the exact same way, you get a sense of how unhinged they are.
I feel like the core personality bit is the same, in the sense that if you were to ask either professor, hey, do you want to go and do a one-man show? He'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
No matter what. And
and then their egos would clash if they were on stage together.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's again another thing I liked. I liked seeing Henry in just how stalwart and unmoving he was in wanting to make this production as close to the original as possible. And again, like I said during the plot summary, while he criticizes the play for being a shameless gender swap, the only reason it is a shameless gender swap is because he was being so rigid during production. At several points, he is given notes about how he could improve something or change something, and he basically is just like, nope, I'm keeping this exactly how I want it, which in turn is what leads to the show being the train wreck it is, because nothing is altered. The only major changes that he did is that all the characters are girls and their names are changed to reflect reflect that. And likewise, time everyone says football, they say football, but for girls. And that's every single time. Otherwise, the show remains exactly the same. And that's what that's what kind of holds it back. And I feel like that ultimately Henry's his own worst enemy in that regard, because he's the one that's holding the production back. He's the one that's so intent on having his original vision be put on stage that he basically is the one getting that when what he wants is put on stage, he's disgusted by it, even if things are going the way he wants them to go. Like again,
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt you. That's just I feel like that goes into he wanted the original product of Working Boys. What he agreed to produce through the show and everything was Working Girls, and he just from the get-go, even because he wanted Working Boys on the stage so hard, he didn't think about that whole ooh, how is that going to affect the story sort of thing, and so it spiraled and because
And that's ironically one of Higgins' own weaknesses as a character, because when it comes down to it, what makes Henry go nuts is that he just wants this production to just get off the ground. Like, going back to the guy who didn't like musicals, one of the reasons why he sided with the alien intelligence in that show or in that production was because he wanted his musical out there. He wanted to be a musical theater, and so given the prospect that he could make Workin' Boys a literal reality, he was like, "Well, I'm gonna go with the alien goop then." And that's what led him to want to side with that thing. And then likewise here, while his show is technically being put on production, it's not being put on production because it's not the version that he wants on the stage, and that's what gets to him. He doesn't see the culmination of all of his efforts. He sees just a bastardized version of a play he put years of his life into, and that's what gets on his nerves. And as a result, that's what leads him slowly going downhill until he eventually just snaps and says, "You know what? I'm gonna kill everybody." And I honestly too, that also provides a bit more of a window into his character, because while Higgins in every Hatchetfield production that he's been in has been an eccentric and kind of nutty professor.
This isn't even the first time he's like just decided that murder is the option, or the only option. But
there was even one show in Nightmare Time where he tried to trick an old woman, or he tried to trick a woman into marrying a guy that worked for him so that he could get her money, and that he was planning to use that money for Working Boys. But again, what this show also does is that, ironically, while it doesn't have a lot of character growth for the characters in the show, it does offer a small window into why Henry is as insane as he is. Because, like I said in the plot summary, we learn why this production is so important to him and why he's so rigid about any alterations to it. Because as you can tell based on how he talks about the other boys in the show, it's based off of real events in his life. And, as he said, the day that all of his friends died was one of the most traumatizing and horrific of his life. Yeah, it was literally one moment they were all playing football in the rain, the water glistening off of their bodies, which even he admits was clearly sexual in nature.
Yeah, one of my things that I really
before you do, and then the next moment they're all dead. Anyway,
sorry. One of my favorite things about Higgins is just like how every time he opens his mouth about his friends, it's, for lack of a better way to put it, it is so gay. It's
very gay.
And then he immediately is like, friends.
Yeah.
Totally colleagues. And
he's a closet gay.
Very much so. I love him for that.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that it is very clear, because I have only seen the guy who doesn't like musicals and Workin' Boys.
Yes.
And so with that, Higgins is 100% unhinged, and he will do shady stuff for his art. I feel like this little 30-minute episode was just him doing the most unhinged stuff in order to protect his art and to protect his story, but
which ironically is he himself.
He's the one that's wrecking it. Yes,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, admit it. Yeah, of course. Okay, again, I can understand artistic integrity, because when you create something, you have a specific vision for it, and you want that vision to be carried out. But the thing is, sometimes what you want to
when your nose is so in it, you can't see how much you're messing it up.
It's part of why you have people proofread it. It's part of why you screen any stories you write, because it's only through the eyes of of another that you can notice flaws. I've written stories before and shown them to friends, and the friends have been like, oh, I liked it, but could you do this instead of that? Or maybe you could add a few more details here. And thus that's kind of helped give me an idea and perspective. Hell, there's even a story that I wrote a while back that I want to add a scene to, both because I think it mixes well, and it's based off a recommendation from one of my friends who I showed the story to. Basically, you do need to be flexible with your vision. Ultimately, it's a matter of trying to find that balance between your artistic vision and what's acceptable, basically, I guess, if that makes any sense. But in the case of Higgins, he holds so stalwartly to his original vision that when he does give a little leeway in order to make the show in order to get the show onto stage, he's still upset because the changes that were made clash with the things he wants to keep. Because again, the show is called Workin' Girls, and it's about these girls making it in the business world, but these are characters that are based off of real people in his life, and that pisses him off that he thinks that their memories are being stomped on like that. And likewise, even the scenes for scenes where he didn't rewrite anything and only changed words from girls to boys and vice versa, they do not translate well. Like when the girls are talking about all those guys that they liked with their shapely figures. That scene was clearly meant for boys talking about girls, but Higgins refused to change anything. And so likewise, seeing him just hold on to this so stalwartly, you can understand why based on the revelations later, but that also just shows how damaged his mind is because that event is so ingrained in his mind that he basically is like, I need to get it out there. I need to make it happen. And so much so that when the show actually is performed on stage and to an audience, he is so disgusted by the final product that he begins hallucinating his friends, and they're basically telling him, what the hell are you even doing, Higgins?
Well, I mean, to be fair, the thing being is that Workin' Boys overall is, like, based off of Higgins' writing bit, is just, it's the story of him and his friends being buddies and enjoying each other's time and just being so excited to be friends. Yeah. And, like, when you don't change anything and you just kind of throw it out there and you have a lot of, like, for lack of a better way to put it, because for my impression, it's supposed to be like their high school type of guys. College type of guys, thank you. And so they have a little bit of a fratty attitude in the sense of it's like, yeah, bro, let's go. And that's great and awesome. But when you put, no context, no nothing else, you take another character, or you take an actor who is, very obviously woman presenting person, put them in the role and be like, okay, so do the exact same thing. You are going to have a very different vibe in the sense of like particularly when, what was that one bit? They're talking about being up to their assholes. Oh yeah, or ass in shit. Yeah. And business calls, I'm up to my ass in shit. And like when you are, when it's the stereotype of the, bunch of guys working in their office, them sitting there going, oh my god, we're up to our assholes and shit, we gotta get all this stuff out. Oh my god, did you see Sarah last night? She was banging! All of that shit, that's just group bonding activities and fun and all that nonsense. When you do that, when you take the women characters and you put them in there and you do not change any of the dialogue bit, you do not convey that same sense of camaraderie. Exactly. It comes across as a parody of itself, which is part of why the audience laughed at it. And so Higgins was trying really hard to recreate a vibe, and instead he was just recreating moment by moment things that actually happened, which were part of the vibe, 100%. But they were not the actual emotion behind the scene, and so again, he's lost. Yeah, he's in his own way. He's basically the biggest force. Like it's not Working Girls that gets to him. It's his own. It's his own stubbornness. To play a small bit of devil's advocate, having gone through several world-changing events, for lack of a better way to put it, I can understand why Higgins would be to the point of like, murder. You can understand him. You can understand why he'd be upset. It's just that he's not compromising in the right areas. No, and that's, because he's crazy. He's insane. He's insane. And he has no ability to perceive the fact that, look, what you're trying to recreate is 100% a vibe of feeling like you belong somewhere and are comfortable and like you can trust the people around you and all that fun stuff. And that's really great to want to recreate, but you can't do that in a play.
No, you can't.
Like, not in a real way outside of, just showing other people what that was like and how important that was for you.
Yeah.
But he is actively trying to recreate that feeling inside himself.
Which would be another reason why he fights so hard for the play, because he's basically trying to reclaim something that he lost, which in this case was that camaraderie he had with his boys, but then likewise... and that's hence why he fights so hard to get Workin' Boys in production, because he just wants to recapture the glory days, which is part of why Workin' Boys is even a thing.
Which would also explain, in my opinion, why he doesn't really, to him it doesn't matter that the actors are women. It doesn't matter that he has to change that part of it, because they're just stand-ins for his buddies. The important bit is the dialogue, because that's what was said. The important bit is what they do, because that's what they did. And so... the actors themselves are just, whatever. They're
but even then, he still finds problems with it, because he still does not like because he still does not like that the fact that the actresses are not boys. They're supposed to be his boys. They're not his boys anymore. And so likewise, that's what makes it get even angrier and angrier. While he is accepting of other factors, because he is okay with Zoe playing him in the production, and likewise when he finally zeroes in on the costume she'll be wearing, he says, "Brilliant, exactly." That's exactly. He's clearly okay with some things, but by virtue of his anti-pep talk on opening night, he basically just wants to wipe his hands of the whole thing, and the only reason his name is still attached to it is because he is just so desperate to get Workin' Boys out there that he's willing to sell his dignity, so to speak. But eventually his trauma, artistic vision, and all come kind of crashing in as eventually he starts hallucinating the boys that he's trying to recapture, and they basically just tell him the rough equivalent of, "You want to get what you lost back, then you gotta wipe the slate clean."
Let's be clear, this was not like his hallucinations of his friends were telling him, "No, you gotta do this, and he was sitting there, "I can't." This was his hallucinations going, "Hey, this is a really shitty play," and then he goes, "I know, what the hell am I going to do about it? I guess murder."
Yeah, exactly.
He was the one who presented the whole idea of, let's just kill people about it. Let's just restart.
It's his own fault. He's both the protagonist and the antagonist in this play, as he's the one pushing everything forward, but he's also the thing constantly getting in his way. You could argue that it's the theater production that acts as the antagonistic force, because they're the ones changing everything, but the thing is, again,
it's so passive, though.
It's the most passive thing. They just offer notes here and there. We want it to be girls instead of boys. And I can understand that would be a little upsetting because of what the central theme is. But then likewise, when he's willing to accept that, he's not willing to accept other things. Because he wants everything to be so note to note the same that he is just not willing to part with anything. And so as a result, the faults in the play all come from his own rigidness, because while things should have been changed to accommodate the rewrite, he is so adamant in saying, "No, I want Workin' Boys on stage, and I'm gonna make sure it stays that way." That these faults keep naturally coming up, and he refuses to address them, and instead shifts the blame to the production itself, claiming that because of what they did, everything doesn't work. And technically, he's right, because again, if it was the original show, it might have worked better. But ultimately, these are the compromises he chose to make, and as a result, he's the one constantly getting in his own way. As while he was willing to sell his soul in one area, he's not willing to sell his soul in others, and that's what leads to everything clashing, because he compromises on the very wrong things, because like you said, he's trying to recapture something that's already gone, and it's that desperation to recapture that finally pushes him to kill, because he basically just thinks this whole thing's a wash, everyone sucks, it's all their fault, I'm gonna do it right.
Yeah, no, actually, okay, sitting here thinking about it, I really do appreciate how the real antagonist is kind of Henry 100%, because the theater company doesn't do anything aside from saying, "Hey, we would like to have girls on the title."
Yeah.
Quite literally, it's one line that they would like to have girls, and then Henry's like, "Ah!" and then says, "Okay, fine." He agreed. He didn't even push back on it to them on the phone or anything like that.
No, even during the first, when it was the first rehearsal, he was all excited until someone offered him notes.
Right. Everything was fine, and it's always fine until someone goes, "Hey," and then he pushes back. I also feel like that goes into, if we look at his hallucinations and everything, the spirits that were there, they read more as hallucinations than they did ghosts or anything, because they're quite literally just sitting there going, "Things happened.
Yeah.
Your play sucks.
Exactly.
And, not otherwise really doing anything other than being like, what the fuck are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
It sucked.
Yeah.
And then Higgins sitting there spiraling with coming up with his plan that he wants to do, and of course landing on murder. Logic.
Obviously, right?
Right. And so with that being that, it is just his hallucinations, which are, part of his brain just going, oh my god, whoa, which is, yeah. And then instead of being possessing spirits egging him on, because we've already introduced supernatural elements into the story as a general overarching thing, this just reads as a crazy guy who wrote a not bad play. Honestly, it seems like the audience was enjoying it.
But they weren't enjoying the right parts.
Right, and that look, the look he had on his face when he said, the main character, lead actress of the Zoe, she was like, oh my goodness, look, they're laughing. It can't be too bad. And he goes, but they're laughing at all the wrong parts. And it felt like that hurt him a lot.
Yeah.
But also, why wouldn't you kind of think about where they would be laughing? How your jokes are landing, where that would be. But anyway, it does 100% read with everyone else thought everything was chill,
except Higgins.
Mm-hmm, and he's the one who kind of made it not okay for himself too.
Yeah. Again, I understand the whole thing with artistic integrity, and sometimes what you create is not what you end up creating is not what you wanted to make. But ultimately, again, the whole crux of it is just seeing Higgins slowly go downhill as he tries to retain his artistic vision while compromising while compromising in areas that he didn't want to compromise in, and then this tug of war is what finally causes him to finally go over the edge, kill all the actresses, and then hold the whole theater hostage until he was shot down. And I do kind of like that. And honestly, I think if I can give another note to the ending, I love how uncomfortable it is. The other endings in Black Friday have all had their own tones. The ending to The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals was whimsically dark because the bad guy won in that one, but he ended it on such a grand, fantastic musical number that even as you're realizing, oh shit, we're all doomed, you're also like, this is fun. Get behind the camera. And so, in that regard, it's still fun. And so, in that regard, you realize that things are doomed, but it's kind of at the same time you're like, well, that was it was a nice clash. At the end of Black Friday was nice and ambiguous, as you had no idea if the main characters would make it out or not because their war was on the horizon. Nobody knew what was going to happen, and it was left intentionally ambiguous as to whether everyone made it out alive or not. And then likewise for the end of Nerdy Prudes Must Die, you had a big celebration as everyone's celebrating homecoming, everything's fine, only for the twist being that Grace Chastity still has the Black Book and is planning to use the power of the Lords in Black in order to exact vengeance on dirty dudes and making sure that they pay. So there is still, so it's dark, but it still has a tone to it. All of them have something to it. This one does not feel ambiguous. This one doesn't feel dark. This one kind of feels in the same vein of dark as The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. But whereas The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals actually made it work well with having two clashing theater motifs going together, as you have this great and energetic musical combined with the horrible aspect of humanity being subsumed by this alien intelligence. This one is just so very uncomfortable as they play the show-stopping number or the opening or whatever the opening was for Workin' Boys over Henry's death, and likewise as you see him fall to the ground coughing up blood, and in his mind this is all one big success, and you just see everyone screaming and running out. It's just so uncomfortable and just makes you go, fuck did I just watch?
I also appreciate that it is very much like this little short is just it reads as this is just people, this is just humans, this is not some alien or eldritch horror god or anything. It's just people doing weird shit and
and ultimately, it's still comedy, it's still horror, and in regard those aspects do work well. But ultimately, when it comes down to this, it's just like a side project, and that's what it is. It was a side project. It wasn't even supposed to be part of the main Hatchetfield stories. It was just meant to be a reward for the Kickstarter campaign. And I think as a nice little bonus, it's fine. It probably would fit right in with Nightmare Time, in my opinion, because it's that kind of a story. As you got a situation with Henry, and he gets to play in production, and then you slowly see him go downhill, and then we get to the climax where he finally loses it, kills the cast, and has to be shot and has to be taken out so that he doesn't hold the rest of the hold the rest of the theater hostage as he tries reenacting the whole play on his own. In that regard, and yes, it's fun, but. Again, if you have to compare it to the other Hatchetfield musicals, yes, those are better. Those are stronger, and those are more thematically present and do actually have stronger arcs. But this one, as its own individual entity, is just enjoyable. It's not something supposed to be grand. It's not supposed to be big. It's just a nice little production that basically is just a nice mix of comedy and horror as we see a man basically slowly lose it because he's being a part of production that he wants nothing to do with. And honestly, I like it. I think it's enjoyable. It's fun. It works the horror elements in well. The comedy is still up to par with the other Hatchetfield productions. I love the acting overall. One of my favorite things was Ruth and how she constantly kept trying to put her all into this.
Her practicing with the corner of the wall. Who are you? Just trying every way to say this, and as soon as she steps out on stage,
she just freezes up and forgets the line completely.
Which. Fair enough.
Fair enough. But yeah, overall, Workin' Boys. It doesn't feel like it ultimately is it's basically the punchline to a joke that was set up in the guy didn't like musicals. But as punchlines go, it's a good payoff. I like seeing that Henry Higgins have to make compromises to get the show into production. I like seeing him just slowly lose it as things aren't going his way. I love the comedy that comes from him slowly losing it as people are trying to make a good production. He's just like, I do not like any of you. And then the horror that comes from him actually losing it is still justified. Reactions are good, it's nice, and the ending is just a big WTF moment. It doesn't feel satisfactory, it doesn't feel like it was earned, it was just, okay, what the hell. And I think it worked. I think it worked for what it was. So overall, I think Workin' Boys is enjoyable. It does, as a part of the greater Hatchetfield stories, it's a side note, but it's an enjoyable side note. While I do think you could easily skip it, if you choose to check it out, I do think that you will have a fun time. And I do still recommend it, even if it's not necessarily viewing for the other productions. It's still just an enjoyable story that I had a lot of fun with.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would also carry it so far to say, so it being a half hour compared to the other movies, like 2
plus hours.
2 plus hours, yeah. You can only get so much done in a half hour comparatively, and there's not an overabundance. Like, the plot is great. The plot is there, as in the sense of there is a very clear what's the problem, what's happening, and then all that fun stuff, and it's not, just kind of like muddled through. It's very clear. It's there, and it's resolved by the end. And it's not the resolution we were expecting, thinking was coming from anywhere, but it's resolved at the end.
Yeah.
And it makes it, I feel like it's a great intro sort of a piece. You're not going to have any, if I only knew who Ted and Paul were, otherwise I had no fucking clue
who any of the other ones were.
Mm-hmm, until you would pause and be like, okay, that's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so, and would get...
I'm a nerd, sue me.
It's okay. I appreciate the information. So... That being a thing, I feel like it would be a great introduction show. Hey, you want to get someone into these movies, but a 2 hours is a little intimidating for a starting point. Well, we have a 30-minute mini episode here, and it
has all the elements that you would expect from them. It's got music, as part of the practice, part of them rehearsing for Workin' Boys. They obviously have songs, and they're like the other productions. They're all good. I think they're all really good songs.
Oh yeah,
they're definitely entertaining, but. Yeah,
it also introduces the characters in a way in which, you could, you want to go learn more about them, and
you think these guys are cool, then here are these plays they're a part of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other side of that also be another part of that being that I really appreciate, and then I will stop. Is I really appreciated how Higgins is the crazy one in this. Everything else is fine. Even the wife and couple, the wife and husband couple that is
Linda and Gerald.
Linda and Gerald. They were nauseating in the sense of they were very. They brought 2 boxes of wine to their play and then were fighting over which one going to which person and da da da. It was still They were chill, normal people. They were just, a snippy couple, which okay, fine,
Yeah.
great. Whereas Higgins was so very much the
off the rails.
Yes, and I feel like that was the logical progression from having seen him in the
guy who didn't like musicals.
Yeah, because it started off as him like he quite literally traded his life in order to go and possibly make this musical, which apparently didn't happen. But he was prepared to go and do that, and now we have like total innocent thing. You get to have your musical. Of course, that would go wrong for him. This guy, I'm pretty sure this guy just needed to go and sit with a doctor for a while and talk about his lungs.
He doesn't need to see a doctor. He's a professor, for crying out loud.
Okay.
And you know better than him. He was actually there.
Yeah, no, but I really appreciate it. It's a good show.
Yeah.
I find it funny.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, overall, Workin' Boys, it's an enjoyable little side project, and I do think that if you're a fan of the Hatchetfield productions, you should check it out. So, well, since this is the last video, my full thought, I think I should probably give at least some kind of summary on the Hatchetfield productions. Honestly, I think they're a lot of fun. These are stories that I think would fit well with the time of year, with Halloween and all that, as I feel like these stories do have do manage to work in enough horror elements that they are genuinely good, scary shows. Like, these shows know what they are, and they do manage to work the scares in rather creative and interesting ways. But I do love how they manage to still combine the horror themes with the comedic themes. And for every Hatchetfield production I've seen, all of them work together well. Yeah, for some it's better than others, but I can't think of one of these plays that I've talked about where the comedy and horror have not managed to work. Well, like Going to Black Friday. Going to Black Friday. Yes, it's a play about a cult forming around a doll because everybody wants this thing, and their shepherd is this entitled woman who's constantly on the phone with her husband. But the horror of what they're doing is still there. Wiggly is still a terrifying villain. The guy who didn't like musicals, maybe about an alien intelligence that wants to take over the world by making everybody be a part of a shitty musical.
Literally everything is a dance number.
Yeah,
like, literally.
But at the same time, the way it operates is still terrifying because it makes it clear once you're a part of this thing, you're no longer you, and it's very violent, does not care, and takes joy in your suffering. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And Nerdy Prudes Must Die it's more of a comedic show, but it still manages to work in the horror because Max Jagerman, despite how over the top and insane he is genuinely terrifying when he becomes this spirit because he's unrelenting, he's unforgiving, and he just wants to cause suffering, and he takes joy in it the way any high school bully would when they do. And that made it all work. And so combining these absurdist elements with these genuinely horrific elements, and you get you get these rather unique productions that in many ways feel out there, but also feel like they're just like their own thing. They're just like a league of their own in many regards. Mm-hmm. And it all helps from them being creative with their budgets, having great acting, great writing, great stories, and great musicals. Mm-hmm. I cannot think of one Hatchetfield production that has had bad songs. Even if I think that a song is superfluous and is not necessary for a scene, I still think all of the songs, every one is perfect. It's on point, the pitch is perfect, the choreography is amazing, the lighting is great, all of them work. And as a result, I feel like the Hatchetfield plays and their own are just very interesting and creatively fun stories. They're all dark, they're all funny, they're all musically inclined, they're joys to watch and listen to. I just recommend them. If these vlogs have not convinced you at all, well, I just say give them a shot yourself. I put the links to all of them in the descriptions for each of these videos. Just check them out if you want to, because quite frankly, you're missing out if you haven't. These are great stories that you can watch any time of year. That if you're in for a chill, a laugh, or maybe a snappy dance number. So, if you're interested, check them out. And basically, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's about it. I really appreciate it. I would recommend these shows to my friends, honestly, if only because like it is really cool to see the tricks of theater, for lack of a better way to put it, in the sense that they utilized a lot of things that I haven't seen since theater class in high school, sort of stuff, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the way that you can quite literally see people just getting creative with how to tell a story when you have only 5 people and 7 parts, or you need to show you've traveled miles, but oh well, there's 10 feet of space. So yeah. I appreciate that because they're really ingenious with the way they do it, in a way that like, it's entertaining, it's fun, it's different, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Go watch.
Yeah, go watch them. If you haven't seen any of them, go watch them right now. And hell, check out any other Team Star Kids productions. They're all good in my opinion. But with all that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this year's Halloween vlog. As always, I'm Samuel Johnson.
And I'm Haley Dudley.
And I hope you all have a happy Halloween this year.